Well, Fox News distancing itself from Donald Trump, according to the New York Times. The conservative cable station hasn't interviewed the former president in 100 days.
Plus, they seem to give more attention to other Republicans. For example, the Times wrote, quote, when Mr. Trump in Washington last week, Fox did not air the speech live and instead showed a few clips after he was done speaking. That same day, it did broadcast live a speech by former President Mike Pence. Here to react, let's bring in our panel, GOP strategist Ford O'Connell and the host of Money Talk with Melanie, Collette. Great to have you both with us. Ford, we're going to start with you. Is this a situation of just sort of not reporting what's going on, actually like kind of going against journalism? Is there something personal involved? What's your take? Why are they doing this?
Well, if Fox News is indeed ignoring Donald Trump, I think it's a big, big mistake. One, from a ratings perspective. Nobody drives ratings like Donald Trump does, but also from a political perspective. Look, Republicans are going to do very well in the 2022 midterms because of Biden's failed agenda. But when it comes to keeping Republicans unified in driving middle-class voters and Hispanics into the Republican Party, that is due to the America First agenda, and that is all of Donald Trump's doing. So if you're not covering Donald Trump, you're not covering the America First agenda, and you're not getting the entire political spectrum.
Melanie, according to the story, the Murdochs reluctantly supported Mr. Trump back in 2016. First, they backed Jeb. Then it was Rubio. Then it was Mr. Kasich. And now we read the New York Times, Economist, and Financial Times all reporting the Murdochs' children want Fox to be more establishment, and a lot of people feel that that would be liberal, and that this is part of that shift in direction. Now, there's the argument that just flatly as journalists, they should be more aware and include what Mr. Trump is doing. But if they're being politically active, is that even a role they should be playing?
I was about to say that I have a little bit of a different viewpoint than Ford does, which is, it could happen occasionally.
Well, he's still living in that, he's still in that spaceship, you know, he hasn't been out for a little while, so.
But that, the fact that we're even having a conversation about what candidate a media outlet supports is kind of sad, because we should not have any idea what candidate a media outlet supports. Media outlets, in earnest, their job is to not support a media candidate, is not to support a political candidate at all. And if they're doing their jobs correctly, as far as I understand how media is supposed to work, they're supposed to be neutral. They're supposed to be Switzerland when it comes to politics. Now, of course, we know that they are not, but the fact that we're having this conversation out loud as if it's okay, I think is what is problematic about the media and about politics today. And I think that media on the left and the right, and again, the fact that that exists, means that media, mainstream and otherwise, needs to take a good look in the mirror, each media outlet, take a good look in the mirror and say to ourselves, are we really doing our job in obligation to the First Amendment? Are we doing well by the American people and being neutral and just bringing them the news? Is it news when 45 does things? Yes, it is news when 45 does things. But it's news because he's a previous president, not because he's 45 and he's a Republican.
Right, simply.
Melanie, one more thing I want to point out to that. It's the establishment part. That's the issue here, okay? The establishment is on the way out in both political parties. So when people say, you know, oh, we should be more covering the establishment, more or pushing the establishment talking points, it is the establishment in both parties that is in fact destroying this country. And that is why Donald Trump caught on. And that is why some folks on the fringe left, like Bernie Sanders, were appealing to people. People are tired of the status quo in the establishment, and the idea that any news network would say, hey, obviously through intermediaries, that they'd be talking about the establishment. I think that lets viewers down.
Yeah, just to set up a little juxtaposition here. Earlier, you know, when we first started, we talked, of course, how Fox ignored Trump's return to Washington, his speech, but they also then played former Vice President Mike Pence's speech live. But what might be interesting is kind of the urgency in which they then spoke about Pence compared to Trump. Again, just setting up a juxtaposition. Take a look here.
Former Vice President Mike Pence is now on stage at the National Conservative Student Conference. Sounds a bit like a campaign moment there, hitting all the high points. Later today, the former President Donald Trump will be at this same event. We'll bring you news on that throughout the day here.
Okay, so Fox didn't cover Trump's speech live or his rallies or speech. Of course, we're covering them here on Newsmax. But Trump is arguably one of the most important Republicans today, polling very, very high. Of course, his endorsements in the primaries really showing that he's got a great track record and still a big pull. And now this is a major news story, which, of course, Fox isn't covering. Once again, bringing us back to, is this journalistic? Ford, we just have about 15 seconds.
Look, I don't know if it's journalistic. I do agree with Melanie. It needs to be neutral, but not covering Trump is a mistake because he's a one-man force of political nature and has a very, very good chance to be the 2024 Republican presidential nominee. So not covering him is a waste of time because he is the game in town right now.
All right, stand by if you would, Ford and Melanie, stand by.